Motorcycle Adventure Dirtbike TV, supported proudly by Adventure Spec in England, Rally Raid Products, Giant Loop in the United States, Adventure Moto in Australia, Adventure Rider Magazine, Pirelli, Botool Oils and RK Motorcycle Chains.
Imagine if you put in one room a bunch of people who love and live motorcycle adventure, experts in their respective fields of engineering, mechanics, suspension and accessory development, who all love the Yamaha Tenere 700 and recognise its potential to be the iconic adventure bike for the 2020s. In this series, I have the great privilege of learning from this vast pool of knowledge and then applying what I've learnt to make my Tenere 700 the best it can be. Welcome to episode 5 of the All Things Tenere series. This time we're focusing on suspension improvements that give you bang for your buck. Straight off the showroom floor, the Yamaha Tenere 700 is a cracking bike. But you don't need me to tell you that, because riders are voting with their wallets and sales of this bike have gone through the roof. Whilst the standard suspension on the bike, correctly adjusted for rider and conditions, does the job reasonably well, it's quickly become apparent that for a substantial proportion of riders, the bike would benefit from suspension work. This demand from riders to get the best from their Tenere has been the driving force behind the recent emergence of a large range of suspension products for this bike. At one end of the scale, just the replacement of the rear spring for the rider's weight will make a huge difference and cost a couple of $100 fitted. At the other end of the scale is closed cartridge fork systems and dual piston rear shock systems that dramatically improve performance for a dramatically increased price. For many riders, it's been a struggle financially just to get their T700 into the garage, let alone having to fork out more money for suspension improvements. In this episode of All Things Tenere, we focus on 3 suspension alternatives that provide bang for your buck in terms of improvement to the suspension for a reasonable price. However, a word of caution. To get the best from this episode, click the pause button now and consider your rider style, your local conditions and how you intend to use the bike. If you've got that reasonably clear in your mind, this video may go some way to assist what can be achieved with suspension improvements for a reasonable price. We're very fortunate to have 3 suspension systems available to test side by side. During the day, we covered over 300 kilometres of tracks and had 3 test locations that tested specific qualities of the suspension that are important to us. Clive, finally we've got the 3 suspension kits to have a look at. Tell me what you're up to today.
So a few weeks ago we fitted Rally Raid open cartridge to Dave's bike, K-Tech piston kit to my bike, and we've got clubbies with the stock revalve. So today we get the opportunity to ride all 3 bikes together and get to jump between the 3 bikes over the same terrain and test them and then compare our notes. As far as costs go, this is the cheapest setup. So we've used the original stock pistons and just re-shimmed it to get the setting we want. When we move to the K-Tech system, we've replaced both the compression and rebound pistons and the needles with them and then used their settings. With the Rally Raid, this is the open cartridge kit, 35mm, so it's increased the size of the pistons, and we've replaced the internals, retained the outside bodies. There's still another kit which isn't here, which is the closed cartridge kit, and that's even more expensive again. So the rear ends, we've also done the same again, so stock piston revalved with the new spring to suit the rider's weight. The K-Tech piston kit revalved and with a spring to suit my weight, and then the full Rally Raid Extreme replacement shock, so completely different setup, again sprung to suit the rider's weight.
The first test consists of a straight piece of undulating dirt that has a 30 centimetre deep erosion gully that is sharp-lipped. These types of obstacles frequently pop up on the trail, and if the rider isn't prepared, will likely cause the forks to fall through the stroke and hit the valve caps with a cringe-worthy crunch. The first bike up for the test is my black bike with the Rally Raid Products 35mm open cartridge forks. Clive, first bit of testing on the Rally Raid suspension, what do you reckon?
Yeah, for me, the first ride on it, it's definitely not stiff, it's not a motocrosser, but it gives you a great feel. You can hit that ditch over there, which would normally, you would get that cringe factor just before you hit it. Boom, straight through it, don't really even feel it. So yeah, very impressed so far.
Clubby, you're going to give it a run?
This is the one I'm really looking forward to, Dave. You've talked it up a lot, son. You've talked it up a real lot. So I'm really looking forward to it, yes.
All right, go and get your helmet on, son. So this is Clubby's first couple of 100 metres on my bike.
Now, Dave, one question, right? First ride on the Rally Raid kitted 700. All I need to know, nothing, everything else is irrelevant. What do I have to give you for that fork kit, mate?
Mate, it'd be a lot of money because I tell you, I've been using those and they're bloody fantastic.
Yeah, it's really seriously impressive. Even before we got to the hole in the ground here, just riding it around, it feels different. It's fun to ride. It's like the first time I rode my bike with the kitted, the valved and preloaded front end. It feels different to stock totally, obviously, of course. But then this one, I've still got, like, as Clive said earlier, a bit of cringe factor on my front end when hitting big hits, and you brace for it. This one, it just soaks it up. It's impressive for sure. The shock butt, like Clive said a couple of minutes ago, we've got to tweak that to match what the fork is doing, I think. You would have seen there, it's not kicking, is it, Prof? It's not bottoming.
It's just
no, it's not a rebound issue, is it? It's just like, is it just stopping in compression? Is that what's happening?
I think it's just getting very close to the bottom, and I think if we go 3 or 4 clicks of high speed compression, we'll get it dialed right in.
Closer up to how the fork is performing, because the fork is major difference over any stock piston size setup and cartridge setup, isn't it, mate?
We'll go grab an Allen key. And
I reckon that's worth a tweak right here and now.
So
and we ride it again before we even ride the other bikes.
Yeah, so just to fill you in, there's low speed compression and high speed compression on the rear shock. So it's quite an easy adjustment.
And when we're talking speed of the shock, the velocity it travels at, not the speed you're travelling at on the bike.
Yeah. All right, let's go and make that little tweak, eh?
I reckon it's worth doing. You agree? Yeah. Because like at the moment, the fork is markedly better in this little controlled environment than what the rear end is doing, isn't it? And the rear end we just know can be better. Yeah. Okay, I think do it.
So both Clubby and Clive like the Rally Raid forks, but they have picked up that I need to increase high-speed compression on the rear shock by about 4 clicks. This is another reason why it's great to get out with your mates, because the benefits of their feedback riding your bike and your ability to see your bike in action makes fine-tuning suspension easier. So Clive, we've been focusing on the rear end. We've got 4 clicks in on high-speed compression. How are we going?
I think that's nailed it, yeah. It feels like the front and rear's balanced now for those higher speed hits. Before, the front felt great, but the back just felt like it was pushing through that little bit too far when we hit those bumps. In first and second it was fine. It was when we stepped it up to third and we started hitting it a bit harder, that's when you really noticed it. 4 clicks, hitting it the same way, definitely a big improvement. I think we've nailed it now. Even when you spend a lot of money on your suspension, the final dial-in tuning is still up to the individual. That's why they give us clickers, is to get it so that it suits you the best. Some people will like it a bit plusher, some people will like it a bit stiffer. It tends to vary on the type of terrain you're riding, the tyres you're using, the pressures you run. and how fast you hit things. So today's a perfect day. We've got a section of track, we're going over and over and over it again. We're playing with the clickers and we're dialing it in to get just that feel. Mind you, we are trying to do it for 3 of us, but we all ride pretty similar, so the feel comes out pretty much the same for all of us.
So what's next, Dave? I'm almost getting confused. There's so many 700s. The blue one, that's the K-Tech bike, isn't it? That's the next one?
Yep.
All right, excellent. Straight onto the K-Tech bike now.
All right, good on you. What's going on, Clubby?
Okay, the K-Tech bike. Now, I'm surprised, Prof. It's this one, and I'll bet it's your setup. It's just balanced, front to rear. Like the way the front is taking the obstacle, the rear is matching it. Like we said a couple of moments ago, the Rally Raid bike, it felt the rear was taking it harder than the front. We tweaked that. This one feels balanced. And I think I'm hitting that the same speed, and I'm having no more displeasure as what the Rally Raid setup was, you know? Like, really pleasantly, surprised shouldn't be the right word, but like, yeah, no, just happy with how that worked there, and particularly the balance. And I'm going to ask you one thing. Your shock spring, weight, rate, suits my weight as well? Or
it's a 9, so it's the exact same spring that's in your bike.
Same as what's on my bike.
Mine's 8.5.
Yeah, yours is slightly lighter spring rate, isn't it?
Yes.
But that's on the Rally Raid shock.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But when we did the forks and we put them together, we put the same springs in between the K-Tech and the Rally Raid to make sure that we weren't comparing springs.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, fine. No, this is impressive. And as we're saying, like, this is the middle spec and middle price setup, isn't it?
Yes.
This was the way this bike rides today with that front end kit that you put on it and the setup at the back, is it?
So it's a K-Tech piston kit in the front and the rear.
Yes. Okay.
And that's using the adventure spec that they supplied with the kits.
Yep.
So it's not a special tune, it's how the kits come. And then just, playing with the clickers to dial it in to suit me.
Yeah, I reckon you've got it dialed front to back for sure. Yeah. Definitely, mate. And again, like we say with any of these setups, it's higher in the stroke than the standard bike, isn't it? The standard setup. Yes. Like hitting that on a stock bike, it'd be a different scenario and a whole lot slower scenario.
Painful.
More cringe factor scenario, wouldn't it? Yeah. No, that's really impressive, Prof. There.
So Clubby's tried Clive's bike, so I'm going to go on Clive's bike now and give it a run. So let's see how she goes.
Not that hit. When it comes on this hit here.
To assist me in comparing the K-Tech suspension against the Rally Raid setup, I went straight from riding Clive's K-Tech bike back onto mine.
So mate, that was an interesting way to do that, you know, just go straight off your bike, straight on this. I'd have to say both bikes, there's about a cigarette paper between them. Like, it's really good. I think, you know, whatever you're doing, those suspension setups are just brilliant. I mean, I was going at a fair rate of knots. I mean, most adventure riders that we know don't ride at that speed through that stuff. And no, both bikes soaked it up really well. I couldn't pick between them.
Yeah, I think it's a good setup.
Yeah.
I think even though, like you said, most people don't ride like that, it's for the occasion where you're scooting along, there's a bit of shadow, and suddenly that is in front of you.
Yes.
And you have to deal with it. And there's no time to brake. It's like, okay, you've got to hit it. And the difference is if you've got good suspension, you hit it and you don't brake things or you don't get bounced off into trees.
Yeah, no, it's really inspiring to me to see how, you know, the Tenere 700 by itself is an outstanding bike. But we always knew there was just a little bit more handling in it, you know, just by tweaking the suspension. And, you know, since we've got the bikes and we've moved forward with development, you know, over this last, I don't know, what, 14 months, it's been amazing.
12 months now we've had them, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, is it a motocrosser? No, it's not a motocrosser, but it's I reckon these bikes now are purpose for adventure riding. You know, there's no surprises. You can get hit by a surprise now and you're not going to lose control.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Yeah, the K-Tech setup's great. This is great. I've been on clubbies. I probably need to go on clubbies here. Yeah. But I just thought those two are the ones that really interest me. So putting them side by side and just getting on them straight away was a good way of doing it.
Yeah, well, I think we should all just jump on clubbies now and just do a couple of runs just to get the feel of the difference.
Yeah.
Onto Clubby's white bike with the standard revalve. We ride away from the first test with the impression that all bikes could cope with that one-off surprise hit pretty well. There wasn't much between the Rally Raid and K-Tech systems, and the standard revalve on the white bike had performed more strongly than we had anticipated.
Clive, you better come in here, mate, because I need to shake your hand like that. Oh, sorry, I've got a sore hand. But you know, that valving setup is really good. I'm quite amazed. Like again, it's very close. There's only very small amounts between the performance of the suspension on this particular test. So I look forward to getting down to Waddingon Creek Road where we got those really sharp rocky bits and the G-outs and the whole works. But as a first test, these three are very close. And they're certainly miles in front of standard. They're miles. There's no comparison to standard.
That looked a lot better than what I thought it might look.
Yeah, I was expecting.
I must say. What I'm going to ask you, I've intentionally got my clickers on the front, both up in the soft end of the range, 16 out.
Yeah.
Any feedback impression there?
I thought it was really good. Yeah. I thought the way the bike is set up with this suspension setup was really good.
Yeah, because what I seem to have kept chasing the whole way through the exercise, and I would have thought something like that, the front end might have gone through a bit too quickly for you, but it didn't look like that.
No, didn't look like
and then, but I've been doing those tweaks for all the fire roads and forest roads that we ride until I feel like I've got the suppleness I want in the short travel.
Yeah.
And that's where I've been surprised by your bike.
Yes.
We all thought it was going to be a motocross bike. Oh, it's going to be race-bred suspension, but
it's not.
Yeah, I would really look forward to in the next part of the test trying that scenario. Yeah. We will with both bikes now because they've been a good surprise here on a big hit.
Yes.
You know, a fast off-road hit. Let's now maybe move into more real-world conditions that the average adventure rider is riding all the time.
Yes.
And just see how the three bikes are.
The reality of this is the bump that catches the rider out and your suspension can't cope with it.
Yeah.
And what we've found is the three bikes, the suspension, if something like that snuck up on you, you'd be fine. Like you're going to get through that without losing control, without, as Clive says, putting force into other areas once you've bottomed the shock.
You don't want it to go, that's right.
Like none of the shocks are bottoming now, like we've sort of mine out, a bit more high-speed compression, but you know, they're all going well. No, the thing that irritates me with video is that hole is about, I don't know, 30 centimetres deep.
Oh, it's a foot deep, with an edge on each side.
With an edge on each side, and it doesn't look it. The video doesn't do it justice. But that's the sort of thing that causes people
you
to
imagine
crash.
guys fully loaded with another 15 kilos of crap on the back,
yes,
and plough into that, and the suspension runs out.
Yes.
Like they use it all up, and then it rebounds, and then it all turns to tears.
Yeah.
The second test area is located on a section of track that combines sharp edge rocks and ledges with erosion mounds. Clubby and I have tested here before, and we had experienced the forks regularly bottoming out.
Okay, we start the testing of the bikes. Yeah, so what Waddingon Creek Road is about is whoops and these really kind of sharp edge rocks. You can't really see them on the video, but it's a great place for testing suspension.
Unfortunately, we were unable to get immediate feedback at this testing site because of the noise of the cicadas, and we continued on to the third testing area, a fast-flowing trail with big erosion mounds, rocks, sand, tight corners with loose gravel. It's got everything. In this testing area, bikes were swapped between riders about every 10 kilometres. This was the most challenging test for the suspension, and the gap between the three setups widened significantly.
Well, had a cracking day, some new trails that you guys haven't been on, and we've been testing these three bikes. So let's start with clubbies now, because we've done Wattigan Creek Road and then we've done a number of other trails that have really tested the suspension. Clive, what's your view? This is the standard kind of setup. Just run through it again in terms of what modifications have been done.
So it's springs on the rear.
Yep.
Spring rate. Revalved
Yes.
with the stock piston. Same with the fork, revalved with the stock piston.
Yeah.
And 5mm spacer washer on top of the springs to preload them to the correct height.
Yeah.
I think it works well. You get a bit more feedback through the handlebars, especially on the rough terrain. And the sharper edge rocks and that, you really you do feel them, but it does absorb them well. You can still launch it, it'll take air. It doesn't land as well as the other two.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what we were talking about, wasn't it? You know, and again, I've tweaked the front end to suit
Yep.
my style, and compared to you, certainly, you like
Yep.
it launching. Clive's probably a semi-launcher, and I'm ground control. You know, like I roll everything when it comes to the erosion mounds, and that's particularly what I've chased. Is just that we've talked since day one with this bike, some initial compliance and softness with the front fork especially, and that's where I've got my clickers backed off, both rebound and compression, to give me that. But then when we get into situations like today, well, obviously you would need to be able to go back harder, firmer with the clickers there to control, because we've had the trails of 1,000 erosion humps today, hasn't it?
Yes.
In here, and a lot of sharp edge rocks. So you've got a real contrast, haven't you, for what you're trying to cover, from the small edgy stuff like we had this morning over at Wattigan Creek Road, and then through all this afternoon, it's just been big erosion humps, haven't it?
Yeah, I think as a kind of the lower level modification, it's really value for money. I think that the rear end, to me, is excellent. The front end, and I'm appreciative that you had the compressor clickers back more than me, but I still took the bike to its limits. Not on normal landings, but when it's certainly under pressure, under brakes, and then you kind of have a rise. I had a couple of bottoming moments that were not pleasant, but they certainly wasn't as bad as when it's standard. But again, I think if the settings were right for me,
that would help
I could
in
just
that scenario.
I could click that out.
The big thing that we chased from day one with the setup for my bike was, like as you've mentioned a number of times, Prof, is for those big unexpected hits compared to a stock setup.
And this morning it did that well. I was really happy with it.
Yeah,
I think
it's not really doing anything wrong.
Oh, no way, no, that's right. And
no.
it's doing everything so much better than a standard bike, which for me is undersprung. Simple as that. I'm a pie eater, cart and gear all the time. It's just undersprung for me,
And I think, pretty much what we've proved today is that you can get a good budget setup that does work, and it does make the bike safer to ride under varying conditions, and it gives you the ability to get a bit of air and that. And the more you spend, the better result you got.
Yeah.
The Rally Raid kit is the most expensive one of the one we tested,
but
it was the one that performed the best. The harder you rode it, the better it performed, the better it landed. The shock, you pretty much, once we got those clickers dialed in, you forgot about it for the rest of the day. You never gave it another thought of what the back end was doing. You just pointed it where you wanted it and knew the back was just going to do the right thing every time. Yeah,
it's interesting, like the rear shock, I didn't spend enough time looking at that in the review, but today I've really been focusing on it, and it's very impressive, but that's a lot of money.
Yes.
And I still think, and we come back to that, and John Mitchinson's talked about it, if you're going to go to the Rally Raid setup, and that's one of the options we're talking about, if I was someone going right now, I'd come to you and I'd say, Clive, do my rear valving, get my spring rate right on the rear, and I'd go for the Rally Raid fork. That's my view, but we haven't talked about K-Tech yet.
No.
Yeah.
No, there's options, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the other point, just before we leave this bike, you've still got adjustability.
Yes,
and a lot of adjustability, and as we've found today, even from the budget bike, you're still adjusting even
the good one,
the expensive bikes to still, it comes down so much of it to individual rider and individual application.
Personal feel.
And like as you see
Riding
100
terrain.
times a day with your customers, is trying to read them, what they're doing, to give them the maximum setup, isn't it?
The K-Tech's clearly priced in between the Rally
Yes.
Raid, and I think you got a value for it too. So
I thought it was good
Yeah.
value.
the front end was very compliant on trail trash. In fact, the feedback,
Yeah.
I think it had the least feedback through the bars
Yes,
when you were
definitely.
going fast
agree with
along
that,
a rough trail track.
Yes.
It doesn't have quite the bottom in resistance, and if you pushed it harder, you got to the limits of it.
Yes.
Unlike the Rally Raid, it had that bit more after it.
Yeah.
Traction was good. I think it's they've nailed it as the sort of combination adventure setup. So you can launch it, you can ride it all day because it's got it's got that
enough
compliance
give and feel
to
in
it.
Yeah.
That it's not, you're not getting the feedback through the bars. You're not going to wear your arms out and tire yourself out, and you can do a full day on it and get away with it. But if you're going to push it really hard and you're going to ride it hard all day, you're probably going to find its limits that you wouldn't find if you run the Rally Raid kit.
Yeah, so this morning I would have put a cigarette paper between the Rally Raid and the K-Tech suspension on that unpredictable one hit.
Yeah.
But when we started pushing it, particularly down Wadigan Creek Road, I took it faster, and I really loved it. It's like this plush feel, and it absorbs everything. And it wasn't really until, and it takes jumps well. It jumps well, does all that well. I haven't bottomed it out today. But then when I pushed it harder and got to I ride a little bit faster, and when I got to that pace that's quite high, I found when I'm G'ing out, it bounces up a bit. There's this kind of rebound pushback. You'll have a better description for it.
That's exactly what it is.
And
it's a lack of high-speed rebound.
Yes.
And when we were doing the install, I think I mentioned to you that I saw it on the dyno and I thought that it lacked a little bit of high-speed rebound.
Yeah.
But in the fairness of the test, I put it in the way they gave me the spec sheet.
Yeah. But you could go back now.
I will be going back to that
totally
and put in a couple more shims in it to get that high-speed rebound a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. So some really good options. Yeah, you just got to pick the one that's right for you. But I tell you what's an advantage, what no one or people rarely get, is having 3 bikes.
Oh, that's the thing today.
Riding all day.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And being a bit scientific about it. And
on a good mix of terrain. We had everything. We had sand, we had big jumps, we had G-outs, we had rocks and rough tracks. Everything was there. Absolutely.
The thing I'm pleased about is, the basic Tenere is a wonderful bike. I really enjoy it. Probably 70% of riders, if they get their springs right, that'd be enough for them. We're talking about the top 30% of riders, particularly in Australia, maybe 40% in Australia.
But it's guys who know what they want and why they want it.
Yes.
And they're the guys that are going to have that dosh and want to and happily spend it on a K-Tech or a Rally Raid or another aftermarket suspension setup, and they're the guys that'll benefit most from it.
I think the thing I like about it is the guy has really pushed his piggy bank to the limit to get his Tenere. He can just get a revalving of hive.
This is a $950 setup, isn't it? And it takes it to the next step from stock.
I think it's important.
And that's a wise investment. What's that? 2 sets of tyres? Like it's if you're going to be committed to big miles on it, with a reasonable pace and a reasonable load, it's a must-do if you're over 75 kilos. We keep saying, isn't it?
So if you're going to summarise it in a really rough way, this is how I suggest. This is a really good entry level, and for most people it'll be fine. The K-Tech brings it up certainly another level. You can definitely feel the difference. There's a plush feel.
Yeah, but did you also think it seemed to ride higher? Like it stayed up, or certainly compared to this one, I thought. But I was most confident on the K-Tech bike.
Yes, and it was lovely. And so with the K-Tech bike, I loved it. If I didn't push it really, really hard, I love that plush feel. It's an ideal, as you say, Clive, an ideal adventure setup. I thought it was really good and strong and confidence inspiring. But for me, and look, I'm biased, I think, and I have to declare my interest in Rally Raid. I've been doing R&D for them for a long time. But when I'm pushing it really hard, the thing that attracts me to the Rally Raid suspension is it's just got a bit more adjustability. I can see the guys who really push their Teneres hard, probably that top 2% or 3%, they can adjust it up, you know, and they'll have very hard suspension settings and be able to achieve that, won't they?
Well, yeah, on the compression side, you're down the bottom end of
like
that range. So there's
today
a
we were
long
backing it off,
range
weren't
of
we?
stiffness to go in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we
For
didn't
faster,
even,
confident riders.
get into.
Yeah, exactly. Mate.
So lots of options there, isn't there? And good stuff.
Yeah, but I think good results, eh?
Yeah,
And each has its place and each has its price point.
Yes,
and it's all relative, definitely.
The suspension modifications that we've talked about today can be done by any reputable motorcycle suspension specialist. That said, I'd highly recommend getting onto your social media sites that specialise in the Tenere 700, or talk to your local Yamaha dealer who may be able to recommend someone near you. In my local area, I'd highly recommend Clive Ward of Motorcycle Biz for those customers around Newcastle Way, and Nick Dole of Technic Motorsports for riders in Sydney. I don't have a business affiliation with either company, but I have extensively ridden and tested motorcycles that they have prepared, and they have consistently delivered on dramatically improving suspension performance. So, first cab off the ranks is the stock forks and shock revalved. This comes in at a total of $900. The K-Tech kit with new springs will set you back $1,680. My preferred option of the Rally Raid 35mm open cartridge fork and the OEM or the standard rear shock revalved with a new spring will set you back $2,150. Finally, the current setup on my bike, that is the 35mm open cartridge forks and Rally Raid Adventure shock with twin pistons. And this will set you back $4,050 installed. There is no doubt the performance of that rear shock on my bike is outstanding, but it also comes at an outstanding price.
Alright, so we've got to get down this very steep hill.
Is that the extreme section? Is that
That's
where
the
we're finishing
extreme
with?
section. We'll go down there in a minute. Alex is turning around to show the extreme section, straight off the end there.
Yeah, right. You're going first, Alec. You're leading, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
I might watch. There. Where's your big beamer, Alex? Show us your big beamer.
There's my beamer.
Alex
Looking
came
pretty.
off today, did a big slide.
Oh, did we have to mention that?
Yeah, we did. Big thanks, Alex, for doing some filming for us today and providing some excellent entertainment. You clip along on that 1200.
Yeah, I was going all right today. Just took a jump a bit too aggressively at one point.
Yeah.
And,
Clive witnessed that. Apparently you slid backwards on your heads for 10 metres?
5 metres.
5 metres?
Yeah,
all right.
But crash bars did their work.
That's
I
good.
love crash bars.
You love
I was
crash.
tempted to throw myself under the bike to prevent more damage,
Yeah.
but it was okay in the end.
Well, the big shitter looks all right. So,
The scars just merged in with the other scars, eh?
yeah, it looks all right. That's the side it went down on.
Patina,
That is,
isn't it?
yes. It's all good.
You've even got the dirt out of the cylinders. You had a
How
bit
did you
of,
get that out, mate?
you had the dirt in the cylinders. That's gone out.
It's just that soft sand just fell out.
Awesome, mate.
I tell you what, you know, Alex, you've made me more money on YouTube than any person I know.
Yeah,
and
well, I've yet to see any of it. But,
no, I know.
Yeah, know that feeling, Alex. Have you
Yeah.
been promised a 3-piece feed at KFC?
No, actually,
No.
I haven't.
Oh, you haven't even
Oh,
got that
God, they're
far.
getting their heads
I
together.
won't let you forget that, dog. It was in
Yeah.
the contract. It was in the contract.
The mad TV actors are
contract.
getting their heads together, Clive. Well, you'll be throwing it out there soon.
I'll be talking to my agent soon.
Yeah. Now, if you haven't watched it, Alex in the Valley of Doom is one of your most famous videos, isn't it?
Right. Yes, I guess.
So, Clubby, I was going to talk to you about this suspension, but there's no point with these cicadas, so we'll...
What?
Yeah.
You're in Australia, Dave. You're Australian outback, son.
I can't hear myself think, so we'll have a talk when we get out of here.
Okay, mate.